welcome to another exciting episode of Mental Health Forum. And I'm your host Sana Zia. And our today's topic is very important to discuss, and that is the dangers of screening children for mental illness. And my today's guest, or even my co-host, is Kim Cullen. So let's welcome Kim Cullen to our show. Hi, Kim.
Hi, Sana. How are
Welcome
you?
back.
Thank you. We've got a very exciting briefing for everyone tonight, so looking forward to getting that information out to educate people a little bit more on these issues that we've been doing.
Yeah, you are right, Kim, and that's the purpose that we are doing this show, to educate people on various issues to do with mental health and psychiatric human rights abuse. And I think our today's topic is very important because it's one of them, and that's very important issue to highlight and to discuss that, like what is this. What are the dangers of screening children for mental illness. And Kim, you are our guest for tonight as well, so I just want, before we discuss what is all about, how this issue arises in Australia particularly. So I just want to ask, or I want to start with the very basic thing, and that is, what is screening children for mental illness?
Okay, that's a really good question, Sana, because it's like, firstly, like, what is mental illness? So what we know first, we've done quite a few shows together, and we know that, like 78% of mental illness, there's an underlying medical condition that's not been diagnosed. And we also know that there's, deficiencies and all sorts of problems that people can have that can, manifest as a mental illness. Now, with children, we go, okay, so we now have a situation here where there's a program in place potentially to screen every single child in Australia, 0 to 3-year-old, 1.25 million children, for mental illness. Now, you asked me the question, what is screening for mental illness? Well, it's a very subjective list of a checklist that is given
Okay.
to determine whether someone is mentally ill or not, whether a child has a potential mental illness or not. And we can go through those if I think we should probably go through those.
Yes. Yeah. That's, I think, that's a very good description, and you highlight that, what this screening stands for, or what this means. Now, my next question is, because I go through the fact sheet which is available on your website, cchr.com.au, and that there is a proposal to screen all 1.25 million children aged 0 to 3 years old in Australia. So now the question is, how this has come as a result of Australia's Productivity Commission's inquiry into mental health. So how this issue arises in Australia.
It's very interesting, Sana, because the Productivity Commission is actually a commission that's set up to, it's an economic condition to find out how we are spending our money in particular areas, and in this case, mental illness, right, or mental health. And so the inquiry was supposed to be set up to address the reasons why so much money is being spent on mental illness and mental health, and how this can be improved. Are the things that it's being spent on, are they working or are they not working? However, instead of addressing, like the inquiry, the productivity inquiry, instead of addressing the real causes behind that and looking at the lack of efficiency and efficacy of psychiatric treatment, and the clear evidence that potential, there's more potential harm in the psychiatric drugs, then they're not tackling the right questions, right? Because there's actually a complete lack of scientific evidence on with psychiatry. Like, there is no blood tests, brain scans, anything like that to determine if someone has a mental illness. It is totally subjective. And so this Productivity Commission seems to have gone a little bit off track, and they've made a decision based on what we consider erroneous data that screening children is going to be a solution to this problem, whereas it is not going to be a solution to the problem at all. It's only going to actually make the problem, I consider, CCHR considers, worse.
Okay. And Kim, if it's really worse, and of course there are some scientific reasoning available as well, then again I think it's if we look at the situation, then it's very dangerous, I must say, because it's related to children, and the age we are mentioning here is 0 to 3, which is like, they are quite immature at this time. So that's why I think even the results or the outcome may be more horrible, because it's related to children which are under 5 years of age. So now I want to ask, what are the draft report recommendations for screening based on all this scenario?
It's a really good question, Sana, because what we need to look at is, if anyone has anything to do with children, like if you're a mum or a grandmother or a teacher or, anybody, you've got a niece or a nephew, that children, babies, right, have certain behavioural, things that happen. They might be hungry, so they might have irregular feeding patterns or difficulty sleeping or crying, or if their parent goes somewhere, like I had my little granddaughter, if her mum's not around, she'll cry for her sometimes, right? They might have separation sort of, or a stranger anxiety, or tantrums, or be shy, or, have you ever seen a little kid when they've lost track of their favourite stuffed toy? They go frantic, like, where's my favourite stuffed toy? And then if you've never seen kids running around the house going crazy, especially at the moment, then these are all of the so-called psychic disorders that for 0 to 3-year-olds. So if a child, this is part of the screening, so there is a checklist of specific things that the mental health, not the mental health nurse, but the maternal nurse can look for. And if any of these particular points came up, 2 or 3 points, or they consider that they're called emerging, so it means they don't have them now, but they could get them, right? That child could be diagnosed as having a mental illness. And our real concern with this, Sana, is that when this has happened in the past, like, I just want to give you a few statistics on this, Sana, right? So in 2007 and 2008 in Australia, there was 300 children under 3 on psychiatric drugs. Now, to me, that is like 300 kids too many. However, less than 8 years later, in 2015, we then had 7,800 children aged 2 to 6 on psychiatric drugs. Now, we can't get the exact statistics on that now. They're not available. But the numbers of kids being put on psychiatric drugs is being increased. And one of the most common things they get put on these drugs for is called attention deficit hyperactive disorder. And some of the so-called psychiatric symptoms, once again, or behavioural problems that they diagnose based on this is some of those things that we mentioned earlier, like hyperactive, or run around crazy, or, get distressed easily, low attention span, those sorts of things. Sana, I'm a teacher by trade, I taught for many years, and kids, that's what kids do. If you've got kids, you let them run around, you like them to run around and get off that extra energy, and they're very creative. And if we put these kids onto a psychiatric drug, it's a mind-altering drug, it's very dangerous. And there are other solutions, and we can talk about those other solutions if parents are having problems on what can be done about that.
So, Kim, of course, we can talk about solution as well, because whenever there is a problem, there is a solution. But one thing, being a mother, which I'm really concerned about is like the way they diagnose. As you mentioned that, like the nurse, even the childcare worker, who are in childcare, and if they find like, that child is doing something which is different than other children, or maybe they are not in that mood and all that, and then if they write and they declare that okay, there is some issue, then they start doing the testing and all that. So my question is, how come that they are eligible? What is the criteria on which basis they diagnose that okay, this child need to be screened and all that? Because 0 to 3 years of age, there are different mood swings as well.
Absolutely. They're not going to be determining which children are going to be screened, Sana. They're going to screen all the children. And the way to do that is like at the moment, all of our children, when you have a baby in Australia and probably most other places in the world, parents take their children to maternal and child nurses in our community health centres, okay? And we have them tested for hearing and sight and whether they're eating well and, these physical problems, which is very, very important to have your child medically tested for these things. And the maternal nurse will look at and make sure that, see if the mother needs any help. Maybe she's having trouble feeding the child and needs a bit of advice or something like that, or a bit of backup on something. And these are very important facilities that we have. However, what they're now doing is they're putting this mental health check. Now, I just want to say something here. They're not calling it a mental health check. The terminology has been changed. It is called a social and well-being check. So it sounds great, because we really want our kids are important and we really want them to be doing well. However, when a parent unwittingly takes their child to be checked out at the community health services centre, they will be checked on this subjective list of checklist that will be given to them to see if they have got any mental illness problems that could come up in the future or that they have now, based on these things we said earlier. So, and the thing is it's going to be tested at 1 to 4 weeks old, because this is when we get tested, 6 to 8 weeks old, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. So it's like it's going to happen multiple times. And at some point, there's going to be more children being diagnosed with a mental illness. And this is what is potentially very, very scary. Because once we start saying that our kids have got mental illnesses, we're going to stop treating them as normal everyday kids, as what we do. And, they're going to be labelled, and that label will stay with them their whole life. It's not the way to bring kids up. Yeah.
And the main thing to know is, it's not an informed choice. If somebody is checking my child or labeling my child, but I am not informed about all this. So I think that's the major thing which need to be highlighted. And then, as you said, that it's not labeled as that they are doing something related to mental illness. It's, community well-being. So there are two different things, mental illness and community well-being. Of course, it's related to you want that it's been they accept community and they have to be a normal person who value all the systems and all that. But then again, being a parent, I think it's my right to know what is happening and why it's happening.
You're absolutely correct. You've hit the whole point right, the nail right on the head, as we say. It is an informed choice, and this is why we need to let people know about it, because if it goes through and becomes legislation, Sana, it won't be an informed choice. It will be, this is what happens when you take your child to get checked out. They will have their normal medical check, which is totally fine, but they will have the social and well-being check. aka also known as mental illness check, because that's the list of symptoms, and the list of symptoms are taken from originally from what the psychiatry manual, which is called the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, where they have all their labels and all the symptoms of those so-called mental illnesses. I'm not saying, sorry, I shouldn't, it's not that they're so-called mental illnesses, because I know people do have troubles, but as I said, over 78% of mental illnesses, there's the undiagnosed medical condition. So if you've got a child who is, hyperactive or running around crazy or something like that, you need to look at what sort of food that you're giving that child. And there are other solutions as well. But definitely that informed consent is a very, very important issue that needs to be addressed, and parents need to be aware of it. And, they can read the fact sheet. We can get copies of those to them. We'll put them on your various sites, and they can go to our website, or I'm quite happy to send it out to people. Get themselves informed, and then we're asking people to actually contact their MPs and talk to them about this.
Yeah. And now, Kim, of course, we are discussing all these side effects and what are the dangers and all those things. Now,
Yep.
I want to know what are the symptoms of this so-called psychiatric disorder in 0 to 3 years old? What things they consider as okay, this is high time to label them as they are going through mental illness and all that. If you just give us some overview of the
Absolutely.
symptoms.
Well, they're the things that I just set out before, right? So they're going to be checking for irregular feeding patterns. So if your baby refuses to eat when you expect them to eat, if you're told to put them on, this baby should eat every 3 hours, right? And the baby's crying half an hour before a feed, right? That's an irregular feeding pattern. There's actually nothing wrong with that. That's, by the way, that's quite normal. Every single person on this planet is different. So we need to take that into account. If the child has difficulty sleeping, if they're crying a lot, maybe they're not well, or they're uncomfortable, or, there's a whole lot of reasons for that. If the toddler cries because the parent's not there, say a grandparent or someone's looking after them, and they're crying because the parent's not there, or they get anxious when strangers come around, or if they have tantrums, or if they're shy, if they have a favourite animal and they lose track of bits, or they're hyperactive. And there's other list of things too, but there's this checklist. We couldn't get an actual copy of this checklist that's going to be used. It's not available for us to get. So, these are the lists that we have gleaned, that will be told from previous checklists they have, but pretty sure that that's what they're going to be looking at. So it'll be a matter of ticking off the boxes. And if you've got more ticks than not, then we need to keep an eye on that child, because, they could have an emerging mental illness, and we need to report that just, to a psychiatrist.
Yeah. But Kim, whatever the symptoms you are mentioning, it's very common in every child. Like being a mother, I know, even being a teacher, or even those who are early childhood, workers and all that, they know that it's very common. Kids are shy. Every child is different, and because that's why they are child. They show tantrums. They are sometimes don't like to eat anything. Even once my daughter, she don't like to eat anything and all that. I took her to doctor, and doctor said it's quite common. If your child for a day or two didn't eat anything, this means it's normal. They are active, performing well. This means it's all right. So it's quite common. Hyperactivity. Sometimes if they take sugar intake is really high, the kids are really hyperactive. So you remember, before this we discussed with one of our guests, and he said hormonal disturbance is one of the reason. So of course sometimes we eating habits does have an impact. So there are thousand things. So taking these normal things, it's very easy. Like, being a mother, and now it's COVID-19. Every mother agreed that every child is showing tantrums, they are crying, they have difficult sleeping because there is no timetable. People have to stay at home, so that's why.
Yeah.
So how convenient it is to label a child that they are going through mental illness.
It is so easy, Sana, and the absolutely horrendous thing about it is that a lot of these children, if they are labelled, they most possibly will end up on psychiatric medication, or sorry, psychiatric drugs. And at that point, when they're on those drugs, there's going to be more problems, because what you're doing is you're putting a kid on a drug like, for example, the drug that they give for attention deficit hyperactive disorder, ADHD, is usually Ritalin. Now, Ritalin is very similar to cocaine, and you need to stop and think, would you give your child cocaine?
No?
Absolutely not. So then you
Yeah.
need to decide, am I going to give my child Ritalin? But like, once again, and I think I've said this every show as well, Sana, if you have someone or know someone who is already on a psychiatric drug, do not just stop them, because the effect of going off the drug, you can have other effects which are even worse
Yes.
than what you had prior and also on the drugs. So to go off the drugs, you need a competent medical doctor to help the person actually go off those drugs in a proper medical way, which is weaning off them.
Yeah.
And like what you said before, like, find out what it is, find out what the problem is, and handle that. But with these kids, for the screening of these 0 to 3-year-olds, how can you say a 0 to 3-year-old is mentally ill? It's just
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. It's insane.
Yeah. And plus, as you mentioned before, that how convenient it is to label someone, and of course, that someone is, of course, child, which is very precious to parents, to the family. So, and then uh, I know that because when I go through the whole report, I know that the bill is going to be approved. I think, if I'm not mistaken, next month. So, how can we raise awareness on such an important issue that people not only get aware about what the situation is, what the problem is, but also they want to know how can we stop this thing happen.
I think that's very important that we do that, and there are certain things that we can do. And this is a federal bill, so it will be going through the federal parliament. So we need to, but it's also going to be, money's going to come from the states as well. So we need to let our MPs know. So we need to contact our local, federal, and our state MPs, and we need to let them know about this. So what I firstly recommend is that people read the data themselves. Have a read of the fact sheet, get the information so you're informed, because like Sana said, it's informed choice. You need to know what's happening.
Yeah.
Then what you can do is you can contact your the Premier, the Health Minister, the local and state and federal MPs, Members of Parliament, and advise them. So I'm just going to read out the different recommendations that we have here. Advise
Yeah.
them of the recommendations and harm they will cause to our infants and toddlers.
Yeah.
Request that they do not support funding for these proposals. Ask them to take action to ensure existing funding is redirected to programs proven to help children and not harm. And ask for an inquiry that actually investigates the psychiatric treatments, including psychiatric drugs, as the reason behind Australia's failing mental
Yeah.
health system. Because if they did a proper inquiry into that without, without bias, they
Yeah.
would find the truth.
Okay. And I think that recommendations are really good, and that every person should know about all these recommendations or solutions. One more thing, Kim, which I want to ask is, what can happen to our children if they are diagnosed with a mental illness? is there anything we can do as a parent or as a community?
If they already diagnosed as a mental illness, I would,
Yes.
if I had a teacher or someone who told me that one of my grandchildren or a child that I knew had been, had a mental illness, I would be stepping back and I would be looking at that person. I'd be asking them, on what basis are you giving me this information? What's your expertise in being able to say that? What are the symptoms that my child is exhibiting that you feel that this is the case? And then go to the CCHR website, call our office, get some data on it, get the information. If someone says that to you, we are willing to give you the information and help with you and even work with you to get that overturned, because that just shouldn't happen. There are so many normal behavioural problems that are being diagnosed as mental illness. This is, not just for children, but right throughout, all the age groups. And we need to stop and we need to look at it and we need to get the facts and we need to question it. We get ourselves informed so we have the power and we know the facts ourselves. And then when you have that, you can say, no, I'm not giving my child this drug. I'm not doing that. That is not the way that I believe this should be done. It's wrong. And then, we're stronger within ourselves and we have a stronger community and we can help our communities and we can educate them into doing the same. So I think that's probably the best thing to do, like what you said, and what we're saying, informed choice. That's what we're about here, Sana, giving people the option to get the facts and actually make a decision based on those facts and not just on the hype or what they've been told is true without actually really looking at it factually.
Yeah.
Now, so children do have problems, there are problems, but it could be, it could be a learning disability, it could be like they can't read properly, so maybe they haven't been taught phonics, so they don't know how to sound out their letters to read properly, or they might have a problem with another subject and they go, I just can't do maths. Well, maybe it's just too steep a gradient. Maybe someone's trying to teach them division when they don't know multiplication tables. As a teacher, I used to help, I'd have kids come to me, be brought to me to help them. And it was always either an educational issue, a medical issue, or it was something to do with their own self-confidence that they had teachers telling them, treating them in such a way that made them feel that they were stupid or they couldn't do it and they lacked confidence in themselves. And so often I just used to have to step back and let the child find themselves, validate them for doing the good things that they could do. And, children are children. We just need to let them be kids and love them and give them as much love as we can.
Yeah. Now, I really like this, what you mentioned, that children are children, and plus, they are sometimes slow learners, they are quick learners, so there are different categories. Even in counseling, we come to know that every person is different. They have different aptitudes, they have different attitudes. So, of course, and plus 0 to 3, this age is where they are learning few things. They are learning motor skills. They are learning new things in their life. So they start responding. Sometimes they like it, sometimes they don't like it. Sometimes they want to show interest, sometimes they don't want to show interest. So at this age, labeling a child for mental illness, I think it's not justifiable. Being a parent, it's really a big concern for me. And of course, if you are in counseling or even if you are a teacher or in early childhood, every day we come across that there are so many people, so many child who have these normal things or symptoms. So now, Kim, in the end, now it's time to wrap up our show. Anything related to this issue you want to highlight?
I'd just like to, I think everyone who's had kids knows about this. There's this thing about the terrible threes. When your child gets to about 3-year-old, they start to become very independent and You know, it's like they'd be like, oh no, I won't do this. I don't want to do that. And, you know, I won't wear that. And I'm not putting my shoes on now. And it's like, that is just a child finding themselves and, you know, the being just becoming more and more themselves. Um, so if anyone has any information, you know, sort of any information on anyone being screened for mental illness or, you know, this social and emotional well-being, and they would like more information on it, or if anyone knows or has anyone who is on a, you know, had any psychiatric abuse and would sort of like help to make a complaint, please contact my office. You know, we're there to help you. We're there to help you make your complaints and actually get some sanity into our system so that we can get a system that's set up and it's going to be caring for the people in a humane, workable fashion.
Thanks a lot, Kim. Thank you so much. Our today's topic is, I think, all those parents who are watching us, or like, you know, they are getting all the information. It's really important, as I mentioned in the beginning, that this is very important topic to discuss because it's related to our children. And these are the things, maybe there are so many people in Australia who are migrants, and like, you know, when somebody say that, okay, it's we are doing some tests and that is for community well-being. So as a person, I said, okay, no problem, because you trust someone. So you said that, okay, they are doing something for the well-being of me, my family, and of course my child. But I think that is the reason, as we mentioned before, that are the main reason or the purpose of doing this show is to educate people. And that is what I think today, what issue we discussed is really important, that the dangers related to screening children for mental illness. So once again, Kim, thank you so much. Thanks a lot for joining in and like, you know, discussing such an important topic. And again, next time, I must say that to all the viewers who are watching our program, that thanks for your support. You like our program, thanks a lot. Thanks to Kim as well, because every time she brings some really very interesting topics and we discuss with wonderful guests, they come and they discuss. So once again, as Kim mentioned, that the reason for doing this is we need to educate people so that we make informed choices in our life, and that is related to our loved ones. Till then, keep watching and keep supporting A1 TV. Thank you.